I'm male, 18, and my childhood was pretty rough. Me and my elder brother, Matt, male, 27, were victims of verbal and emotional abuse by our dad. My mom divorced him when I was 8, when we found out that he had been cheating on mom ever since they were married. Even worse, he had a child with the other woman who was my age. That means that my dad was cheating on his wife and got two women pregnant at the same time. I mean, honestly, my dad is an irredeemable POS. And the only interaction I have with him nowadays is because he has settled into life with his new wife, Rosa, and pays mom child support. I keep our interactions short and I don't speak to Rosa. Matt, unlike me, absolutely does not interact with dad or his other family. And for both of us, mom is our number one priority. However, things ended up getting a little awkward for me when one of my half siblings, the dude who was my age, ended up transferring to my high school. His name is Lewis, and I ended up making his life a living hell for a whole year. However, we ended up having a confrontation which ended in a fist fight, and from then on, we kind of became friends. I know that sounds really weird, but fighting it out made me realize that I was just angry at my dad, and Lewis wasn't to blame. When I got to know him better, I realized that he also didn't like dad. And both of us kind of bonded over that. IMAO. I even spoke to my mom about it, and she thinks the right thing to do is to treat him with respect, if not like a brother. Matt, on the other hand, told me that he didn't like what I was doing, and it was like letting the other family get a foot in the door. Nevertheless, he didn't really stop me from hanging out with Lewis. Dad knew that his two sons were friends, but I guess he thought it was something too awkward to bring up. Whenever I spoke to him, it was only about academics, whether I needed anything or stilted conversation. Recently, Matt had planned a brother's trip out to one of the Great Lakes where we'd go fishing and camping, and it was just a small thing with him and me. We'd take his pickup, screw around in the wilderness and have fun, and then come back. I made the mistake of posting about it on my social media, which my dad follows, and he texted me about it out of pure curiosity. I told him about the itinerary and the plan, and he suddenly started hinting that I should take Lewis and his other daughter, Megan, female 8, with me. Groaning as I texted him, I tried to explain that Matt wouldn't be okay with it, and to be honest, I don't really think I would want a little kid with me on this trip either. Then, without continuing the conversation by text, my dad asked if I could meet up with him because he wanted to have a man-to-man conversation. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When I went to meet Dad, he told me that he was a changed man. He had come to hate his past self for two-timing his wife and Rosa and mistreating me and Matt. He said that he tried to do a better job with Lewis, but he had failed there too and wanted a better life for everyone involved. He requested that I take my step-siblings on the trip with my real brother so that he could begin to mend bridges, especially with Matt. In his mind, he thinks that this can be the first step towards bringing two disparate parts of his life together. I could see that he genuinely meant everything he said and regretted treating Mom the way he did. But I also didn't agree with the logic of bringing my step-siblings along on this trip. I tried to explain to him alternatives, such as reaching out to Mom or Matt and allowing me to speak to them as an intermediary. But he said that it wouldn't work. This trip, in his eyes, would be the best way to move forward. The meeting ended with me not committing to anything, but since then, Dad has gotten steadily more persistent about allowing Lewis and his daughter to come along. To be honest, I wouldn't even know how to broach the topic with my brother. Unlike me, he still has a lot of hatred for his step-siblings, and getting over that is its process. By shoehorning other people into our trip, it's unlikely that he will be magically okay with everything. With that in mind, I finally went back to Dad with a hard no, and he said that he was disappointed, but wouldn't push for it anymore. I thought that was the end of it. I thought, but it wasn't, because I ended up speaking to Lewis in school one day, and he mentioned how his dad had become pushy all of a sudden about a trip out of town. To get this, the exact same location as me and Matt. When I filled him in on what had been going down with Dad, he literally went, "Oh," out of realization, and then both of us ranted about how Dad was trying to use us as tools to fix his shitty behavior in the past. Lewis then told me his mom didn't have any idea that this trip was some rom-com attempt at reconciliation with his old family, and he's pretty sure she wouldn't appreciate being left out of the loop on this. That was a new piece of information for me, and I decided that I would tell Dad that I knew about his sneaky new tactic, and if he continued with it, I would tell Rosa about it. When I did call Dad and tell him, he said that he was leaving his current wife out of it because she didn't want us to be close. I guess she's the Matt over there. And because of that, it would do too much damage to his relationship. I ended up threatening to tell her, though, because if he did end up intercepting me and Matt on our trip, the situation would probably be a lot worse. Now, I kind of feel like a douche for basically threatening my dad to stay away. Was there a better way to do this, or am I really TA? Update 1. Okay, I think I've come to understand that my dad is being a dick. Lewis told me that he's basically figured out that he was the one who told me about Rosa being left out of the picture. And ever since then, Dad has been acting cold to him. I find this to be so hypocritical that he wants us to be together, but he's icing out a kid instead of being mature about things. However, the plus side of this is that the trip from Dad's side is on hold. So at least Matt and I won't have to deal with him inserting himself into our time together, which, to be honest, is really great because we're heading out in just a few weeks. I think there shouldn't be any problems now, and maybe when I come back, I could speak to Dad about a healthier way to make bonds with us without excluding anyone. Also, I don't get why so many of you are commenting about just being no contact with Lewis. I'm mature enough to understand he isn't just his dad's son, but his own person. Hell, even my mom, who was a lot more hurt by the divorce, can recognize that. Y'all are redditing a little too hard, IMO. Update 2. I can't believe this, but Dad showed up at our first motel stop by himself. It was so awkward and tough to explain to Matt. I thought he would casually come by and pretend like he was coincidentally in the same place as us. But his plan had completely changed. He said, "Son, I came all this way because I needed to speak to you, man to man." Matt was taken aback, and I could tell that he was debating whether or not to turn around and leave. But he ended up deciding to stay and talk things out. They went out of the lobby, and after a while, Matt stormed back, saying, "Frick this, let's go." On the car ride towards our camping spot, he told me how Dad had demanded a chance at reconciliation and asked to come along with us for the trip we never had. He tried to tell Matt about his new family, which ended up setting him off, and I guess he just wasn't willing to understand that Matt had his way to process things and make amends, if he wanted to make amends. Long story short, Matt threatened to call the cops if he saw Dad within a 20-foot radius of us. He also asked me to call Lewis and tell him what Dad was up to. I obliged, and I could tell that he was shocked. He told me that Dad had the other family, that he was going on a work trip, and I guess Lewis felt super betrayed. Because he told me that he was telling his mom about what Dad had done, and to be honest, she deserves to know. Even if I won't ever like her, she's still being lied to. Update 3. So Rosa didn't let Dad back into the house after his work trip. She's clamoring for a divorce because she thinks Dad still has feelings for Mom, and there's just a whole lot going on over there. After we came back from our trip, Matt decided that he wanted to talk to Lewis, and I ended up being a mediator between them. Matt said, I disagreed with a lot of things Dad said to me at the motel. I don't think he deserves forgiveness for no reason, but I did come to realize that you're a close friend to OP. I also realized that he's probably hurt you the way he hurt us. So I just wanted you to know that I don't despise you. I think that meant a lot to our step-sibling. All three of us are kind of friends as a group now, although things are still quite awkward sometimes. I think it just helps to have someone else who knows how toxic Dad is, and that helps us cope sometimes. NTA, and I think you're mature for understanding why you shouldn't hate your step-sibling. He's a victim of consequence. I hope you apologize for your bullying, and I'm glad that your father hasn't been able to force a reconciliation just because he feels sorry for what he's done in the past. NTA, oh my God, your dad is an entitled a-hole. He thinks that just because he started feeling bad, everyone else should be like, oh, let's make up and become happy again. After the damage he caused, he needs to realize that it'll happen at the pace of the people he's hurt, not at his pace. Next story. My family likes to assume I will do whatever they want. I got a call at work once asking why I wasn't at the airport to pick up my brother-in-law. Apparently, they asked me to pick him up a few months ago. I asked them if they could provide me with an email or text where they told me the date, time, or flight number. Nope, that was the last straw. My mom and dad gave me shit and tried to make me pay for his Uber. So I sent my entire family an email followed up by a text. I would not be doing anything for any of them unless they had written confirmation that I had agreed to do so. My dad has been awesome about it. He had to have cataract surgery last week. We spoke about it a month ago, and he then followed up with an email with the time, date, and location of the appointment. He also asked me to confirm that I had agreed to take him and pick him up. Easy peasy. The rest of them have been a pain in the ass. My mom asked me if I could watch her and my stepdad's dogs while they were out of town. I said yes, just send me the information about your trip at least a month in advance so I can make sure to rearrange my plans. I got no further information. Last weekend, my boyfriend wanted to go to Banff, so we went. My mom called me on Thursday to ask where I was. I told her that I was in Banff. It became a huge deal because she was leaving Friday morning. Oops. I told her that I hadn't made any arrangements for the dogs since she never told me when she needed them watched. She said I was being an a-hole and that it had slipped her mind. I told her I would be back on Monday night and that she could kennel them or leave them with my sister until then. She said not to bother. She ended up just leaving them with my sister. My sister is pissed at me, so I forwarded her a screenshot of the text where I agreed to watch the dogs as long as I got the requested information. I told her I would cut my trip short immediately if she could get my mom to show me when she sent me the information. I got a call from my mother telling me I was being difficult and that if I agreed to do something, I need to follow through. I could provide dozens of examples of my family asking me for a favor and then giving me all the information I need to do it. But I could easily show you half a dozen times where they either claim that I agreed to do something but cannot provide proof, or where they expect me to change my plans last minute because they forgot to tell me everything I needed to know. I'm not going to change. If my 76-year-old dad can bend his neck to tell me everything I need to know to help him, so can everyone else. NTA, and I like the way you're handling it. You're clear in your communication and boundaries, and I think they're not used to that. It's not convenient for them, but your mom said it had slipped her mind, so that's her own fault. NTA, and look at you setting boundaries like a boss. Of course, users are going to be upset with you. They think you should be sitting at home waiting on fulfilling their needs. I was once that person too. I had to learn that my life is mine. These are the rules, and if others don't like it, they can piss off and be angry, not my problem. My life is not dependent on their whims. Neither is yours, and you're taking control of your locus of control. And that's really why they're mad. They're under the impression they control you and don't need to bend the knee to your rules. In fact, your mom is making it a pissing contest. She, FAFO, keep being a boss. Next story. So, in a couple of weeks, my boyfriend and I have planned to go to France for a couple of days as a romantic getaway. His own words, not mine. Just to spend some quality time together because we've both been busy with work. I was excited about the trip and to spend some quality time with my boyfriend, but then he drops this bombshell on me. He invited one of his friends because apparently he's always wanted to see France. So my boyfriend thought he would be kind and asked his friend to come along. So this was a big shock to me, and I told my boyfriend about my concerns. He told me that his friend has already paid for his flight ticket, and he said that he was planning on either changing our hotel room to a room with 2 beds, or his friend would sleep on the sofa. He did all of this without telling me a thing. I told my boyfriend that quite frankly, I don't want his friend to come, and it was supposed to be a romantic getaway, but he said that his friend won't bother us and he'll do his own thing. But I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable with it. We argued for a bit more, with him saying that he paid for most of the trip, so he feels entitled to be able to bring his friend along. In the end, I just got so fed up, and I may be a bit dramatic, but I felt betrayed, so I told him I wouldn't be coming if his friend was. He said I was being ridiculous and I should go since it's been paid for anyway and I was being overly dramatic. But this is how I feel. He said I was being manipulative and cruel for making him choose between me and his friend. AITA? NTA, one does not have a romantic getaway when there is a third wheel coming along. This isn't you and your BFF going traveling. This is the person you have sex with. Going to a place many people think is synonymous with romance. Your boyfriend wants his friend to sleep on the sofa or another bed in the same room? In what world would this be even remotely a good idea? What the frick is wrong with your boyfriend? Is your boyfriend that clueless, or does he want a threesome? Well, now he can just go with his buddy. Next story. I have been married to my wife, Denise, for 5 years now. She has a son, Michael, who's 18. We get along pretty well. He's a good kid with a great head on his shoulders. This past year, my wife and I welcomed our first biological child together, Sarah. We're going through the process of updating our wills, which means choosing guardians in the event that both of us died. When Michael was younger, Denise had her parents listed, but they're now older and in no condition to take care of a baby. We asked my sister and her husband. They agreed. We were explaining some things to Michael that came along with the will. Insurance goes to him if we both pass, what he'd inherit, etc. We also explained that there was an account set up for him to get his own apartment once he finished college. He's currently a freshman. Should we pass by then? Unlikely, but all bases covered sort of thing. Michael then asked what would happen to Sarah. We told him our guardian choices. Michael straightened up and said that no, he would take on Sarah. I said that was very sweet, but he was still very young. Maybe we'd consider updating it in 10 or so years when he's older and more established. My wife said we'd think about it. In private, I asked if she was seriously considering it. She pointed out that Michael spends a lot of time with her, is a good kid, etc., and is volunteering. I said I wouldn't feel comfortable putting the fate of our daughter in the hands of a young adult. I said if Denise was changing her mind on my sister and brother-in-law, that was completely fine, but to me, Michael is not an option, and it should be a 2 yes, 1 no wins situation. She asked if it would really be so mad for Michael to become guardian, and I laughed. While yes, Michael is volunteering, he has no real clue what would come with being a parent. As I said, in 10 years, when he's more established and an adult, I'd consider it. For now, it needs to be someone else. Denise isn't upset that I don't want Michael to be the guardian, but she is upset over how dismissive I'm being and that I laughed at her. She says I'm being hurtful and offensive to both her and her son. AITA? Edit. I'm not changing my mind on making him guardian. Please stick to the judgment I asked about. YTA. You're not only being condescending and dismissive, you've also just told your wife, I don't think you've raised someone capable of looking after his sister, and I'd rather break up our blended family unit than give him the chance to try. Not thrusting the responsibility for a child upon him is one thing, but if he's responsible enough to ask, you should at least do him the courtesy of discussing it. Your sister and her husband could always take over and help out if it does become too much for him. Stay tuned for more stories from Our Girl Relationships.